So before going into more details and better understanding the impact of mental health on an individual and those around them, I wanted to share and discuss two case studies with you. So first, I would like to discuss my dad's dramatic loss of capacity, which occurred just 10 years ago. He was diagnosed with rare onset Parkinson's and Alzheimer's on the same day and was given a very bleak prognosis. He was rushed to a hospital because he had difficulties breathing. Almost overnight, it lost its capacity to speak and walk. A tracheotomy and many tests later to evaluate the extent of the problems, it was obvious that the nerves linked to the muscles in his voice box were no longer working. My dad had lost his ability to breathe unassisted. He could not use his breath to speak words. It was also almost impossible for him to find balance and would fall if not supported. Years of work and he is now able to walk short distances with a cane, but he still finds it difficult to avoid obstacles and to climb stairs. He also struggles to catch his breath after just a few steps. At the same time this happens, I decided to look into DNA testing because about a decade ago, it was all about this test. And many of my clients had done one or another and were asking what it meant for them and how could they possibly change the outcome given in their report. Naturally, I did a few myself and the results were somewhat surprising. Without any history of mental health problem, my test revealed that I was 75% to 95% likely to develop Alzheimer's at 65 and also had a predisposition for Parkinson's. I'm not producing much serotonin in my gut and have some SNPs on circadian regulating enzymes, which also lead to weak production of melatonin in my brain. This makes me a night owl and indeed a very poor sleeper, which in itself is a recipe for developing neurodegenerative disorders. So I contacted my dad and told him about the report. And his immediate reaction was to laugh because no one in his family ever was diagnosed with either. Then he hit me. I asked him when he got his diagnosis. It was exactly 65. Then he paused, and a moment later, he just said that it was all nonsense. I decided to investigate what then happened to my dad. And the frightening truth was that he received an inoculation against some pulmonary condition he had been complaining about for years. 2 weeks after the injection, my dad was rushed to the A&E at the nearest hospital. It took 1 year for the hospital to recognize that the neurological damage was caused by adjuvants in the vaccine that he received without any prior medical evaluation. Now, going back just a few months ago, and my dad, belonging to those so-called vulnerables in the need of inoculation against COVID-19, his GP approved his vaccination date and claimed that the vaccine was safe for him. Within a few days, my dad's health had collapsed. It was worse than it was 10 years ago, almost paralyzed, on oxygen and unable to speak. Over 18 months later, his memory is improving, although it's still patchy. His reflexes are a bit slow, but much better, and he's not making full sentences, although he needs time to think about the words he wants to say. He finds it difficult to breathe and talk at the same time. This is also almost impossible if he is walking or doing something physical. He moved his bedroom to the ground floor, so he doesn't have to climb stairs anymore. And he is now in a process to move into a new home without any stairs. His life will never be the same. He is no longer driving, and in a way, he feels he has lost his independence, his confidence, and even his joie de vivre. The second case study I wanted to share with you today is a client that came to see me in early 2018 and was desperate for help. She was diagnosed with early onset Parkinson's at 39 and was scared about a doctor's decision to once again increase the dosage of her medicine. Naturally, drugs prescribed to help manage neurodegeneration are only showing a positive result for so long before the dosage must be increased. After a while, patients notice that drugs are not doing much of anything and realize that they are less able to manage their condition. Within minutes of our consultation, there were apparent red flags that our doctors never bothered inquiring about. One of her favorite occupations as a young girl was to play with mercury. At the time, she was also a very poor sleeper. At 62, she had lost all joy in eating. She was eating the same 3 meals on rotation due to her son making decisions about her food and what he thought was better for her health. Thanks very much, Google. So she was chronically constipated, going to the toilet once a week or less. And now her medicines didn't work anymore, and she was unable to control her tremors, which many a time will wake her up in the night. She also had painful cramps in her leg and complained about losing her memory and her independence. She was scared to be alone, and so were her children, which made her even more anxious and severely depressed, feeling like she was a burden for the entire family. Her daughter had moved in with her, not alone, but with her husband. So now my client felt she no longer had any private moments, especially when feeling her worst and wanting to hide it. I completely changed her diet and her approach to food. Following many discussions with her GP, I finally managed to get him on board and to recognize and accept my protocol. I asked for 6 months to improve his patient's health and reduce the impact of the condition on her life. This led to almost immediate changes in her life. She felt happier, not only because she felt she was listened to, but because she was happy to eat again. Okay, I was cooking a meal, and this of course had a tremendous impact on your mental and emotional well-being, but this has also helped me to monitor the food she ate and didn't, and to improve her meals every week. Within a week, she was regular. She was going to the toilet once a day. This had never happened in her life, ever. At the follow-up, she told me immediately, I feel free. There was as if a dark cloud had vanished and the weight of years of disability much lighter. Within 3 months, she started to walk without any assistance and could get up from a chair alone. 6 months within the protocol, and she could manage her tremors. And after 18 months, they had almost disappeared. But there was a problem that even I could not do anything about. And this was fear, the fear of loneliness. If she told her family she felt better, then she would probably lose all the attention she had received for over 20 years. Who will care for her if she didn't need anyone? And this in itself was really a concern for long-term improvement, which has led me to pursue my training in mental health even further. NLP also has helped me build a better rapport with my clients and discuss their motivations and fears and allow them to reach more resourceful state. Looking through the lens of naturopathic medicine, there were clear similarities between those two case studies. They share the same triggers, and the triggering factor was toxic overload that eventually led to neurotoxicity with poor cognition, memory problem, and loss of muscle control. We are living in an increasingly polluted world. We are exposed to toxic chemicals every single second of every day, which are present at alarming level in the air we breathe, in our food, and in our glass of water. Everything that is supposed to keep us alive is now a source of problem for our bodies. In this slide, we can witness the impact of ultra-processed manufactured food products since their introduction in our food chain. It is important to note that these products are manufactured with cost in mind. The aim is to keep manufacturing costs low and nothing else. So now if we look at the timeline on the right, we can easily see the increasing numbers of non-communicable diseases in the Western world, including autism spectrum disorders, dementia, and obesity, which also appear to correlate directly with the increasing part of ultra-processed manufactured food products in our diet. And the future is not so bright. Half the population will be either overweight or obese by 2030, and about 152 million people will live with dementia. The US National Institute on Aging estimates people over the age of 65 will make up 16% of the world population by 2050. So an aging population is not the decisive factor in this case. There are actually around 350,000 new cases of early onset dementia per year globally. Mortality rates also increased by 38% between 1990 and 2019, and the trend is unlikely to change. The prevalence of autism in the US has risen steadily since researchers first began tracking it in 2000. So even if cases were not reported before 2000, the number of cases is very worrying. In 2000, there was 1 in 150, and in 2020, 1 in 44. That's an increase of over 340% in just 2 decades. In this slide, you can read information and data relating to the thousands of additives found in ultra-processed food products and their potential role in driving the numbers given in the previous slide. So why would ultra-processed manufactured food products be a problem, some clients may ask? Well, the average American consumes up to 4 kilograms of chemical additive from food every year. And this is not accounting for the exposure to toxic chemicals via other routes, like pollution, bottled and tap water, skincare products, cleaning products, house dust, and more. So studies are showing that the main contributing factor to mental health disorders and neurodegeneration include high body mass index and high fasting plasma glucose. It is thus undeniable that our diet and lifestyle are implicated in the problem. And looking at this slide, it is easy to see the impact a westernized diet can have on the population in general. Over 2/3 of our calorie intake is exclusively from ultra-processed foodstuff. This cannot be innocent and cannot support our health on the long term. Another point for concern is that the average American consumes nearly 60 kilos of sugar every year. But considering many Americans are now avoiding sugar, we can easily anticipate that some people eat twice as much, if not more. So this is truly concerning and not surprising that the US is one of the fattest and sickest countries in the world. With the SAT diet contaminating the entire world, this is the real pandemic, and nothing is done to change that. So it is at us to take the reign, to educate people and change one life at a time. As we know, our food is laden with many questionable intentionally added substances, but also non-intentionally added chemicals, contaminants that are migrating from packaging or machinery and are present in the final product. So just a few examples are listed here in the slide, like solvent, cleaning agent, heavy metals, plastic, phthalates, pet parts, and animal feces. Now, those consuming ready-made foods more regularly may be more exposed than those who rarely do. And this includes so-called healthy foods free from a manufactured vegan product. Many of those substances are also found in many personal care products, cleaning products, and house dust, potentially leading to toxic overload. In total, 3,225 non-intentionally added chemicals have been approved by the FDA. Those are additional to the 10,000 chemical substances tolerated in food in the US and the 8,000 by the European Commission. So not only more and more people are reacting to those added substances, but it is no secret that the nutrient profile of UPFs is typically negligible, a leading cause of malnutrition. Often void of dietary fiber, the synthetic chemicals added to replace the nutrients lost do not provide sufficient nutrition to be relied upon daily. And so deficiencies are inevitable, causing a cascade of problems in the body. Without proper nutrition, our body cannot function, heal, and repair as they should. The system that is the most affected is often the central nervous system. If the brain is starved from the building blocks it requires to function optimally, like healthy fat, for example, there is bound to be many issues arising, like poor cognitive abilities, forgetfulness, and difficulties in concentration, but also sleep and mood disorders. Then come the pollutants in our drinking water and other volatile toxicants that are found in the air we breathe. Indoor pollution is thus a major problem. Again, components of plastic and heavy metals are some of the most health-damaging compounds inside our homes. Phthalates, for example, are of serious concern as a human health risk due to their ubiquitous presence in indoor air. In fact, phthalates are common contaminants in house dust. Formaldehyde, benzene, and naphthalene are some of the most worrisome volatile organic compounds that are also found in indoor air. Heavy metals, mycotoxin, and endotoxins are also indoor pollutants and can contribute to a wide array of disorders. Although it is difficult to assess their effect on human health due to so many variables involved, but also because they are typically studied alone and not as part of the soup of chemicals present in indoor pollution. Their cumulative impact throughout lifelong exposure is also majorly unknown. Ischemic stroke due to chronic exposure to ambient air pollution, multiple sclerosis due to the exposure to secondhand smoking, and Parkinson's disease as a result of manganese content in the ambient air are neurological disorders for which a strong link to indoor pollution has been established. So it is only a question of time before research adds more to the list. In my upcoming book, Detox Before Energize, I expose the most toxic compounds we are exposed to, including those that are present in dust and indoor air. And I'm persuaded you will find it invaluable in your practice. When it comes to mental health, as practitioners, we know that excessive exposure to toxins is a real problem. However, the main driver and perpetrator is more often than not stress. Stress that is the result of poor coping mechanisms, living a life not in line with values and beliefs, but also the activation of the stress response that occur as a result of inflammation in the body. People having difficulties coping with stress may be more prone to develop neurodegenerative diseases. There is a growing body of evidence linking depressive disorders with Alzheimer's disease later in life. One of the potential routes of cognitive dysfunction is via the vagus nerve. The information relayed from the gut to the brain can affect our cognition and well-being. So the first symptoms of gut dysbiosis and food hypersensitivity typically include brain fog and fatigue, and further metabolic dysfunction if ignored. Stress then affects digestion, and poor digestive capabilities fuel inflammatory responses and immune hyperreactivity, deeply affecting the gut microflora. A severe reduction in short-chain fatty acid production and increased release of pro-inflammatory markers, histamine, alcohol, and endotoxins further drive inflammatory pathways, which now can affect brain function further, as well as liver function, and provoke a deeper sense of malaise. In the long term, stress can also disturb thyroid function and thyroid hormone, leading to further complications and poorer quality of life. Complications include immune dysregulation and eventually non-alcoholic fatty liver disease and autoimmunity, as well as physiological changes. As such, it can also go deeper in alienating people and drive them to operate in a constant state of fear, a state orchestrated by a hyper-stimulated amygdala, the fear center of the brain, and the loss of reasoning and control from the prefrontal complex due to the relentless effect of excess cortisol. So in my book, Energize 30 Days to Vitality, I go into many details to explain the role of the amygdala and the effect of stress on people lacking coping mechanisms, many of which end up cutting themselves from the world around them. Social isolation is thus a major problem for these individuals because they don't see the world as it is, but through a different set of lenses and biased interpretation channeled by the amygdala. Typically, these individuals also develop addiction to the news and social media to anchor their fears into their subconscious and so rationalize their fear. For them, that fear is real and the world is now a dangerous place. So every event will trigger a stress response. Their sleep may become a problem as rumination is becoming the greatest disturbance to their circadian rhythm. And this drives a very vicious circle. They may become addicted to caffeine to stay awake during the day and rely on sleeping drugs to create the illusion of sleep. Hypercortisolemia can thus disturb almost any cellular and system function and lead to major disturbances in the long term. Here are just a few examples. As you can see, the effect is widespread and can lead to severe dysfunction if allowed to continue. The link between the gut and mental health is not clear for many scientists and researchers. Here is a systemic review paper that was published just over a year ago that actually established that link. There is also another paper linking oral and gut microbiome to neuroinflammation and neurodegeneration. Alteration in the oral ecosystem can influence systemic disorders. For example, researchers linked periodontal disease with Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, obesity, eating disorder, liver disease, cardiovascular disease, and even rheumatoid arthritis. Periodontal disease are also been linked to depression, particularly in adolescents. And periodontal disease has been labeled leaky gum by many IFM practitioners. So hyperpermeability is thus a major concern when a barrier is allowing pro-inflammatory marker and other substances to reach the circulation. So although the oral cavity and gut and their microbiome profile are well segregated, the oral microbiome can influence the gut microbiome. Research is now suggesting that the oral microbiome of a mother during pregnancy influences her health and the health of her baby. And so the effect of the oral microbiome should not be overlooked, even ignored. So it is believed that we are ingesting upward of 1 billion microbes every single day and swallowing 100 million from the bacteria already existing in our mouth, which can greatly influence bacteria colony lower down the digestive tract. Another pathway where the gut is involved is by mitigating or exacerbating the toxicity of heavy metals, which we know are for the most part neurotoxic. Here is a great study that explains the pathways involved. Use this paper to further increase your knowledge and understand better the negative impact of heavy metal on mental health disorders. Another less known neuroexcitatory compound and naturally produced by the body and some pathogenic bacteria is histamine. We know that past a certain threshold, histamine becomes a problem and may be responsible for what we commonly know as histamine intolerance. This can be made worse by SNPs affecting MAOA and MAOB as well as COMT. So MAOB, for example, breaks down dopamine and histamine. So any factor affecting these enzymes and or a deficiency in cofactors like magnesium, B12, and zinc can lead to poor memory and concentration, mood disorders, aggressive behavior and irritability, and also heightened stress response and increased pain sensitivity, as well as PMS. I also want to add that quercetin, curcumin, and high level of estrogen slow down the action of MAOB. So it may be wise to assess histamine in people with sleep problems, especially those struggling to fall asleep. The combination of MAOA and COMT variants may cause severe neurotransmitter imbalances. And so a targeted DNA test can help you assess the role of these genes. This is very important because MAOA levels are likely to significantly interact with stress processing, including in the etiology and course of neurodegenerative and psychiatric disorders, including Alzheimer's disease. We also now know that C-reactive proteins, which are produced by the liver in response to inflammation, increase permeability of both the gut and brain barriers, and so can impair brain function. Other inflammatory mediators, such as bradykinins, which cause blood vessels to dilate, histamine, arachidonic acids and omega-6 fatty acids also impact the integrity of the blood-brain barrier, and this causes more problems. Mental health and sleep problems very often go hand in hand. And so discussing stress with clients is essential, especially those on antidepressants or relying on sleeping pills. Once again, the vagus nerves play a pivotal role in inflammatory disorders, and low vagal tone is associated with a multitude of health problems. Low vagal tone is associated with poor emotional and attentional regulation in children and has been conceptualized as a marker of sensitivity to stress. This is also where childhood trauma comes to play, especially if unresolved. In difficult cases, it is essential to refer clients of any age to a therapist so they can work on resolving some of the issues related to those traumatic events. It is important to remember that the vagus nerve represents the main component of the parasympathetic nervous system, which oversees a vast array of crucial bodily functions, including control of mood, immune response, digestion, and heart rate. There is preliminary evidence that vagus nerve stimulation is a promising add-on treatment for treatment-refractory depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and inflammatory bowel disease. Treatment that target the vagus nerves increase the vagal tone and inhibits cytokine production. Both are important mechanisms of resiliency. Resilience is the word we hear more and more lately, and for good reasons. Resilience is the ability to persevere in the face of adversity and bounce back after traumatic or stressful events. To be resilient is to adapt to change and to the environment, something that we all had to do in the last 2 years. So here is a very important point. Having a sense of well-being doesn't mean that one individual never experiences difficult situations. Rather, when they do, they are better able to cope when these occur. This is why some people crumble at the slightest inconvenience of their life, while others thrive because they do not see the world through the same lenses and have not developed the same coping mechanisms. So if we were looking to understand stress, it seems that most of what we know is no longer accurate. Even the definition of stress is not universal, as we can see here. One thing for sure is that the symptoms associated with stress are numerous and can vary dramatically from one person to another. The fight or flight response is quite an outdated view of stress, and it has been replaced by what is now known as the allostatic load. Allostatic load refers to the cumulative burdens of chronic stress and life events. It is when the demands on our body exceed our ability to cope that stress becomes a problem and is no longer serving us. We can see here in the illustrations the difference betwn eustress and distress. This concept is actually a lot clearer in this illustration. This is a representation of Ansley General's adaptation syndrome and stress-related dysfunction. So eustress is the productivity phase, whereas distress is a sharp decline and exhaustion of resources, leading to fatigue and eventually to burnout. I see more and more men in clinic that have virtually pushed their bodies to breaking point. It is not surprising since many people had to work twice as much in the fear of losing their job as a result of government restriction over the last few years. Today, many companies expect to pay one salary for the job of 2 or even 3 office workers, and yet offer no job security to their employees, virtually contributing to an all-time high global anxiety. Exhaustion is not the only problem when it comes to chronic stress. The repercussion can be very dear and affect almost all systems in the body. And I want to go into more details about physiological alterations occurring in the brain as a result of stress. Remodeling of the brain can lead to the atrophy of the prefrontal complex and hypertrophy of the amygdala, which explain why some people no longer see the world around them as it is. Everything is biased. Very often, driven by fear, people develop an addiction to the news to reinforce the idea that the world around them is dangerous. They may thus spend more time watching TV for stimulation. Horror movies and romantic movies may thus be their favorite choice. Their diet will also likely to rotate around ultra-processed food products for quick fixes and rewards. But these are short-lived and so can quickly get out of hand. The person putting on weight and feeling worse for it, taking less and less time for feel-good physical activities. At the same time, they are probably avoiding social gathering and much prefer to stay in a place where they feel safe, usually within the 4 walls of their homes. So this opened the door to mental health problems, especially anxiety disorders and depression. This is a definition of mental well-being extracted from my mental health awareness course. Mental health is more than simply the absence of mental disorder. Mental well-being is a dynamic state in which the individual is able to develop and reach their potential. Mental health can be defined as living an authentic life in accordance with core values and beliefs, accurately interpreting the world around as well as life experiences, feeling good about themselves, being able to forge strong and positive relationships with others, and contributing to their community, and a sense of purpose are some of the main aspects of mental health. Problem-solving skills and resilience, so being able to cope with change, are also key. The most common mental health problems are listed here, as well as key factors and how they typically manifest. As we can see here, depression, anxiety and eating disorders, personality disorders, OCD, bipolar disorder, and phobias are all aspects of stress and a combination of many factors, some of which we can address as nutritional therapists, while others may require further support. Yes, there is much we can do with diet and lifestyle changes. And so working in close relationship with our therapists, working with our clients is essential. The impact on the individual's life can vary enormously and may even be disabling in severe cases or even lead to self-harm. So substance abuse is very common. Caffeine and sugar on one end and recreational drugs or painkiller addictions on the other are very common. And the list is not exhaustive, as we can see here. So the problem is mental health problems don't only affect the individual. Because of their behaviors, others may find it difficult to accept them or want to have to do anything with them. They may also feel rejected or that they are wasting their time trying to help. They may also blame the person for not doing enough to change that situation and forget that they may, in fact, have little control simply because their brain is hooked on fear. In the case of ADHD or Alzheimer's, for example, people around may feel quickly frustrated and exhausted, running out of an option, and so may give up trying to help altogether. Indeed, the problem with mental health conditions is that it rarely affects the individual alone. Typically, it is affecting entire sets of people around them, at school or at work, at home and socially. It can also put a lot of strain on families and lead to some family members stopping their life altogether to care for the individual, especially when it comes to their safety, as it is the case of dementia. It is a widely recognized problem that carers very often care little about themselves and always feel guilty whenever they are not around caring for their loved one. Addressing stress is thus as important for carers as it is for individuals with a mental health disorder. When building your health questionnaire, it is important to incorporate a mental health section to assess the impact of your client's mental health problem on their life, but also on those around them, and what they have at their disposal to get the support they need. You already have many questions about the diet, I am sure, maybe even require a 3-day food diary. But it is important to spot area for improvement, especially if they continue to rely on plastic, aluminum, or non-stick cookware in the kitchen. Toxic exposure is also essential to assess. So, as we have just discussed, indoor pollution is a very concerning factor and maybe the mediator of many of the problems they are experiencing. Living in a damp house can also contribute to many allergic symptoms and food hypersensitivities, and explain fatigues, and also anxiety and depression. So whenever talking to the individual or their carer, it is essential to ask the right questions and provide some recommendation to help them build a routine and get plenty of fresh air in nature, if that of course is possible, and spend more time caring for themselves. Some carers may believe that it is a 24/7 job, and so may put their health and mental well-being aside. Some may be frightened even. What if they are not there if something happens? And so they chain themselves to the new set of duties. Again, it is important to remind them that they can have access to extra support so they can have free time to do the things they love. If something is to happen, if they are there or not, will probably not change the outcome. And this is really key to helping them come to terms with the eventuality of life, and so reduce the weight of anxiety and stress on their own lives. So one important factor to consider is sleep. And key questions in your health questionnaires can help you better understand their quality of sleep and also bedtime routines. Is their condition affecting their quality of sleep? If they are a carer, are they awakened every night? That sleep pattern deeply affected, in a way sleeping with an eye open. Ask about medication and look for interactions with food and other drugs, especially over-the-counter drugs like painkillers and sleeping aids. Also, use a scale from 1 to 10 to establish the effect of their condition or the condition of the person they care for, and how to identify how disabling it is to them or the person affected, and finally, their sense of well-being in the last week or month. By educating people, our role is thus of prevention, helping people before it goes into extreme. And if a client comes to see us with obvious symptoms of poor mental health, to nurture them and give them all they need to take responsibility for their behavior. There are many exercises to recommend, but these must be adequate and suitable to the individual's lifestyle. It is also important to remind them about keeping the end vision in mind and what it is they want to achieve. These clients may also benefit from short consultation more often, for example, every 2 weeks. Stimulating the vagus nerve is one of the most efficient tools in our toolkits. Even if the person's budget is low, they can do many exercises for free, including breathing exercises. Meditation may not be for everybody. I have seen it countless times in practice. People with a strong constitution often find it impossible to switch off and sit still. And so meditation is not for them. However, I found that short therapeutic sessions can be extremely powerful in helping people break from a state of hyperactivity to a state of relaxation. I have therefore developed 5-minute SOS meditation session. There are different variations to match the preference of most people. Here are some of the recommendations to give your clients, and they include laughing, singing, sun exposure, especially in the early hours of the morning, hot and cold showers, meditative exercise, walks in nature, taking pauses during the day, aromatherapy, developing gratefulness, and journaling. In my experience, gratefulness and journaling have shown remarkable results for most clients. Gratefulness can be used as a way to break states, especially before bed and before a meal. Allowing the body to mark a pause and focus on the positive can quickly help people change their thought patterns, especially those prone to ruminating and negative inner talks. I like to remind my client that the last thought they take to bed is the first thought they will pop into their mind, setting the tone for the entire day. So taking a positive thought to sleep can be extremely powerful. Journaling is thus ideal. It can also be used in the morning to help clients set intention for that day, and in the evening to unload and prepare to sleep. It must become an automatism to be as powerful as it needs to be. And this is particularly important for carers, especially if they feel isolated and not getting the support they need. I love this quote. I wrote it for the Freedom Food Summit, for which I was a speaker. And I invite you to share it with your clients too. Build strong connections, valuable relationships, and support one another to truly enjoy all that life has to offer. Love, love, and love some more. Nobody can stop you from being happy. Only you can. I also invite you to read Energize, 30 Days to Vitality, so you can ask your client to read it too, to find directions and be better able to deal with stress, become more resilient, and live the life they ought to live. Detox Before Energize will soon be available on Amazon and is already available to pre-order by simply emailing me at the email address that you see on the slides. Both books complement each other and give the blueprint to a person's new life. Thank you for listening.